Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you. As he said, I'm Doug Lewin. I'm Vice President of Regulatory Affairs for CLEAResult. And one other statistic to go with that, in case you don't know who CLEAResult is, we're an energy efficiency implementation firm. So a lot of the things you heard Paula and Ness talking about just a couple minutes ago, demand-side management programs, designing those incentives that utilities can connect with their customers and help them save energy. We design, market, implement those programs. In addition to working for 250 utilities across North America and 40 states and provinces, we manage, design, implement 900 distinct different programs. So, as you might imagine, we believe energy efficiency is a really important part of the consumer empowerment, the customer empowerment piece. You've heard that as a running theme throughout these 4 days, empowering consumers and design for that. Part of the design for that, and again, you've heard this running throughout, is the regulatory design. What is the way that we can design a regulatory system to align the interests of the electric and gas utilities with those of their customers? It's a very difficult question, and that's what we're gonna talk about today. So as I jump into this, I want to show you a couple of, just a graph basically from PricewaterhouseCoopers, a survey done of executives from electric and gas utilities. And they were asked about the current market model, the current regulatory model, right? So you're probably familiar with some of the statistics out there. There's been a decoupling of economic growth from electric growth, partly because of the programs we run, partly because of building codes, appliance standards, things like that. It picked up in the 70s and 80s, but has actually been accelerating. And since 2007, while the economy has grown at 12%, total electric consumption is down 3.6%. The model that's been around, and you heard yesterday on that great panel with Green Mountain Power and Excel and Seattle City Light, there was a discussion of this 130-year-old model, right? So when executives were asked about that model, only 18% of them said that model still works. Why? Because that model was designed for a system that was ever growing, increasing consumption. 44% of those executives said that model is already broken and in need of fixing. 70% said it's either already broken or is rapidly breaking and will need fixing within the next 5 years. So later today, Ann Pramajor from ComEd is going to be honored here. When she was here at Energy Thoughts Summit, she said this: we think about the business model a lot. We want energy efficiency to look like poles and wires that we recover over a longer period of time and earn a return on it. So it treats a service like energy efficiency like an asset. So this is one way to do that. This is one way to align the utilities' interests with those of empowering their customers. This is a graphic that was produced by Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, and I think it really kind of illustrates this point, so I want to talk about it for just a minute. What you see in the bottom left and represented by the gray is really the old model, the traditional model. I say old model, it's not that it's going to go away. What we're talking about is building on top of it, layering on top of it, innovating, regulatory innovation to make that model, that what is often called COS, cost of service or rate of return regulation, better. Cost of service regulation basically incented utilities to put assets in the ground, right? Poles and wires, substations, power plants, and to deliver commodity to their customers, throughput, kilowatt hours, therms. That's what they were paid on. We are seeing an increasing variety and volume of rate-making variants going on throughout the United States. And those rate-making variants are pushing in a direction which is towards value and services. Again, not that utilities aren't going to put assets in the ground, not that they're not going to deliver commodity to their customers, they are. But they're also starting to deliver a lot of value and services. How much have you heard about that over the last 4 days, right? It's been a running theme. How are they compensated for that? How are they incented to do more of that? Why shouldn't a utility be able to earn a return on doing things like smart thermostats, advanced and connected networked lighting, providing data and insights to their customers, even distributed generation? This data and insights one is interesting, right? Because the image is somebody, looking at, a graph on an iPad or a computer or something like that. Most customers probably aren't going to do that. Some will. But what can happen is companies like Nest, but many, many others like them, can begin to automate the intelligence to optimize energy efficiency. So another running theme throughout this conference, and I'll quote Karen Lefkowitz, the Vice President of Utility of the Future of Pepco, who I heard speak at NARUC just last week, and she said, who was it that decided the utility has to stop at the meter? Why do we have to stop there? You heard that yesterday from several of the executives sitting on this stage. Why do we have to stop there? There are assets in the home that can be controlled, optimized, to make the whole system more efficient and thus lower costs overall for consumers. Why would we not want to do that? Thomas Friedman, in his latest book, Thank You for Being Late, talks about the cloud and all the innovations the cloud has brought. And he says the cloud's the wrong word. Cloud is sort of too passive and airy and fluffy. He likes to call it the supernova. I think what you see represented here by data isn't some customer looking at the graph of what they used last month, though that will go on. It's really that automation in the cloud or the supernova optimizing all the time. In order to do this, though, technology innovation is not enough. Regulatory innovation needs to keep pace. From that same book I was just talking about, Thank You for Being Late by Thomas Friedman, he says this, and I love this quote, government regulators need to be as innovative as the innovators. They need to operate at the speed of Moore's Law. I think I heard a couple chuckles in the room there from people that maybe work in regulatory environments a lot. Maybe that's a little bit too high an expectation to have Moore's Law in the regulatory arena, but the point remains. Regulatory innovation is as necessary, if not more so, than technology innovation. So where is this happening? It's happening in a lot of different jurisdictions around the country. I love this quote from William Gibson, the future's already here, it's just not evenly distributed. So where are we seeing this kind of regulatory innovation play out? And I put that parenthetical there to remind myself to tell you, these are just a few examples. If your state isn't on here and you're doing some great things, I want to talk to you about that and put that into my next presentation. This is not meant to be a comprehensive list, but a few examples of where really innovative things are happening in the regulatory environment. Again, I quoted Ann Pramajor just a minute ago. In Illinois in December, in the Future Energy Jobs bill that passed, ComEd and Ameren are both allowed under that bill to rate base their energy efficiency investments. But they actually went a step further and said that if the utility exceeds their goals, they can actually get a higher return on equity for their energy efficiency programs than they would for traditional capital investments. A tremendous regulatory innovation. New York, of course, everybody knows about reforming the energy vision. The one thing I would really focus on through that process is the earnings adjustment mechanism. Same kind of thing as Illinois, trying to give an extra added incentive on rate of return for utilities that go further with energy efficiency, distributed energy resources, bringing value and services to their customers. Also, Con Ed has also rate-based their energy efficiency in their latest rate case. Maryland allows for rate basing of energy efficiency and also does something very innovative on the demand response side, allowing utilities to put their demand response resources aggregated into the PJM market and keep a portion of that shared benefit. New Jersey, we heard a PSE&G executive talk about their programs to hospitals and critical infrastructure and their ability to earn a return on that. Michigan, just 3 months ago, passed a bill that significantly increased the performance incentives. This is a different way of going about it. They're not rate-basing energy efficiency, but they're calculating the benefits of the energy efficiency programs to all of their customers and allowing the utility to keep a share of that. Fairly common, but they're going as high as 30% of those shared benefits. That's a significant amount of money that will significantly impact the decision-making of utility management and boards of directors at both Consumers Energy and DTE, the affected utilities there. California has a regulatory innovation, regulatory incentive proceeding as part of their integrated distributed energy resource proceeding that will allow as high as a 4% adder to rate of return for DERs. Massachusetts has for a long time had very large performance incentives. For all the utilities in the state combined, it's about $80 million a year. Again, utility executives and boards of directors focus on how to increase their energy efficiency programs, how to give tools to their customers to control their energy use because of that. And one of my favorite examples and one of the most recent is the state of Utah. Who knew Utah was innovating on regulation? Anybody? Okay, so what Utah did was, in a bill that was passed last year, they had some very old fossil plants that were contributing to problems on regional haze, and were going to need very expensive scrubber upgrades. What they decided to do instead was to take those assets off their books and replace it with an energy efficiency asset. They created a regulatory asset out of their energy efficiency programs. They earn a return on them. They're now going to be able to wake up every day and go, how do we bring value and services to our customer and earn a return on it just as if they were building a power plant? This is a quote from Brian Wolf, Executive Vice President of Public Policy at Edison Electric. Everybody know who Edison Electric is? It is the trade association of the investor-owned utilities. And he said, if it doesn't fit into clean energy, grid modernization, or a focus on the customer, we're not doing it anymore. Think about that for a minute. Clean, modern, customer-centric. If it's not one of those, we're not doing it. Has the regulatory model kept up? Is the regulatory model incenting utilities to do these things? Why do we only allow a rate of return on the power plant and the assets in the ground, concrete and steel, poles, wires, substations, power plants, and not on the value and services being delivered to the customer? In between these, of course, is the meter, which seems to be a psychological barrier, which in a number of states we seem to be pushing past. As you look at this quote, I want you to think for a minute not just about customers and suppliers. This is Clayton Christensen, The Innovator's Dilemma, talking about how companies stay relevant, how they continue to innovate even in the face of increasing competition. Markets that do not exist cannot be analyzed. Suppliers and customers must discover them together. The same holds true for regulators, utilities, advanced energy companies, and customers. We don't know exactly where all of this is going. There's infinite complexity and uncertainty. But what we do know is that things are changing. We do know that they're changing very rapidly and that the pace of change is picking up, and we've got to keep on top of that. Luckily, we have examples from a wide number of states now where regulatory innovation is happening. And just as in the markets, regulators need to learn from what's going on in other states and continue to build on top innovation upon innovation. Not that we'll ever arrive at a perfect end state, but that we'll continue to perfect the model so that customers are able to achieve additional value and services from electric and gas utilities. The uncertainty here is so significant that I don't envy regulators for this. I don't envy utilities or the companies like ours that are in the space for trying to manage that complexity. But what I do know is we need to do it. We need to learn from what's going on. We need to build on innovations that have happened other places and continue to deliver that value and services to customers.
Anyone have a question about that? While you're chewing on it, this is one I wanted to ask you.
Awesome, great. Yeah.
So I'm seeing this vision of potentially how do we create this virtuous cycle between the utility wanting to support energy efficiency and how that affects load, but also maintaining a commitment to reliability. My phone, internet operating system on my phone, I pay for my phone. I need this phone to work.
Yeah, yeah.
When it doesn't work, nothing else really matters at the moment.
God forbid that phone doesn't work. I'm
Right?
with you, man. I'm with you.
But
yeah,
then I got apps on my phone, right?
Yeah.
And I can pay for apps if I want to do things that help further my life. Are there any parallels there?
It's a great question. I'm really glad you asked it because it's actually something I'd forgotten to say as I was speaking. A lot of times the sort of bucket that all of this stuff I'm talking about fits into is often called things like performance-based regulation or performance-based rate making. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. It goes by a lot of different names. But the reason I bring that up is because what we're talking about here is incenting utilities for performance. I'm coming at it from a perspective of customer empowerment. How do you give customers the tools they need, right? Safety, reliability, and affordability are sort of those three pillars, right? And affordability is not something that's just done to customers anymore, right? It's not just something that regulators sort of make it affordable. Customers can now control their electric use, and that adds to the affordability. You can put a performance metric in for affordability, for reliability, for safety, or for anything else that's important to the stakeholders in that particular jurisdiction involved. Whether it's a city council overseeing a municipal utility, whether it's a state commission overseeing an investor-owned utility. That's the beauty of this. It can be infinitely customized to meet the needs of that particular jurisdiction. Clean would be another one, right? You could give additional performance incentives for making the portfolio cleaner.
That sounds really big, because
yeah.
if performance has been based on reliability and that's ingrained into a culture,
Yes.
you've got to expand what performance means.
Yeah, and there are some states that do that. Will actually give a little bonus for very high reliability, but it's pretty rare and not the norm at this point.
Excellent.
That's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good.
We do have one question.
Yeah.
Ross Walding from University of Texas at Austin.
Hey, Ross, how are you?
My question is, what are the lessons for retailed restructured states?
Mm-hmm.
And to put it more pointedly,
Yeah.
if you have retail restructuring, can you get all the benefits you're describing without adding to the regulatory apparatus, without increasing the amount of stuff that we're rate basing, including paying farmers not to generate?
That is such a good question. And obviously, again, there's so much complexity. Different markets are shaped different ways. I think in the competitive markets, you do have a lot of that value and services being delivered to customers by competitive retailers. And I think you're seeing that really increase, right? We heard from Nest earlier today. There's, I don't know, a half dozen or so retailers offering Nest thermostats to customers that sign up for different plans. But you still have a regulated transmission distribution utility wherever you are in the state, right? Encore, Centerpoint, AEP, SWEPCO, Entergy, on and on. Those can do analyses of what infrastructure they're going to need to build out and weigh those against, is there something that could be done on the other side of the meter, on the demand side? Those regulated utilities do run energy efficiency programs, and if it could be cheaper, go with that option. Again, not to say they're not going to continue to build out the grid. They are. There's significant investment needed in infrastructure, but to weigh that and potentially even give them an incentive to spend less overall, I think is probably warranted, even in a competitive market like Texas's. But I know you know more about this subject than I do, so I want to talk to you more about it afterwards.
We just expect the regulatory apparatus to say, no, you can't build this line because we don't need it. Wouldn't that be a better way to approach this, rather than to pay the regulated entity to not build the line that you don't think we need?
Well, and that already happens, but then the question becomes, they already will say you can't build a line if it's uneconomic. Well, in theory anyway, they can say that, right? But the question is, are they weighing an alternative to that would be demand-side resources? We better stop since we're over time.
Don't stop, just we'll do it.
We'll continue offline.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you.